Hello and welcome to The Correspondent. This is your host Faraz Saeed, and today I have with me the institution himself. He has taught and studied from world's top universities and institutions, Professor Sajjad Naseer. And it's an honor, sir, for me to have you at my show and for me to have a conversation with you on subjects that you've taught us in our institutions. Welcome to you, sir. So Pakistan has been going through a lot of political uncertainty, be it the geodynamics, be it the global dynamics, be it the local dynamics. In a recent past, Imran Khan's, the former Prime Minister's government was de-seated following the successive no confidence motion. Majority of the people, majority of the commentators blame the ouster of Imran Khan primarily on why he basically attempted to join the Russian bloc. So, sir, we would be beginning our conversation, and we'll start with how do you see the changing dynamics of Pakistan on the global stage?
Well, it is a pleasure listening to you, and I'm happy to talk about it, about the issues that you have raised. To me, they are very relevant and very important. And therefore, if we start with this, not only Pakistan here, with the Soviet, because 6 months back when the government changed here, and at about that time, he decided that I want the area of the Soviet Union, and he wants the oil here, and he went there, met them, and returned to get that 30% weight that he's going to, on a lower level, he will be paid. This was an important development. Naturally, the Soviets agreed, but when the Kaptan Saab jo hai changed, and then it stopped. Now, the question is that the Americans, of course, have their own reasons why they are doing it. But in this particular case, when the Kaptan Saab jo hai, he decides that I want the Soviet, this oil, but it was stopped. Now, the question is that if the Soviets do not agree, the Indians at the same time who are receiving money from there, they are receiving 30%, and they are also happy about it. And there are some other states across the world, they have been receiving from there. The question is that who are receiving it? Who are these people? And how you deal with it. Now, the Americans are concerned. Well, they are also passing through difficult times because they do not have the money. There is a problem, there is a crisis. And the Soviet Union also have no crisis, they have the money. But Soviet Union has no problems. But so far as the rest of Asia is concerned, they have a serious problem. Now, they don't have the money. They don't have the money. And the Chinese, they have been willing to bail them out, giving them from here, Soviet Union, not, but the Chinese, they are the one really doing it, helping them out. So the question is that the world in which we live here, including the Chinese have the money, they have received so much and they have gone up to this level, and the power from across from the world, they are coming down here. From here they travel, then they come back. Now, it's a superpower. It's a superpower. The question is, if we deal Pakistan, or for that matter the Soviet, or the United States and the Europe, the entire Europe, some of them, like 6 or 8 states, have a power, and they have the bomb. then the question is that with changing that is taking place in the world, the question is who has the power and who is going to use that open power. They don't have the open power because nobody can kill or hit somebody and in return they'll come back and they kill your people and everything will be destroyed. I think this is a very important change that has taken place where you cannot do this anymore. You cannot destroy the rest of the world. You cannot do more anymore. So the question is how you deal with this. Yes, you want to say?
So if we take step by step the Russian thing,
yeah,
and then the Chinese
right.
aspect and the American aspect. But if we address the first question is, was Imran Khan guilty of changing the scope from the Western bloc to the Russian bloc? Was he guilty about it?
Well, so far as Kaptan is concerned, the question is that once that he was out after 6 months or so, so the question, he doesn't have a position now to deal with, except that there is opposition against them. There are different parts of the world which are not supporting him. Nobody talks about it and nobody talks in favor of it. So the question is now they are trying to mobilize, which is, I think, is an important change that is taking place here, that mobilization of the common people. And 60 to 70% of the people are in favor with the Kaptan. So I think this is a very important. Now the question is the opposition or in power now, and even the police and the Fauj together, they may be together, but Kaptan Sahab jo hai, 70% of the people are with me. And therefore you cannot against him. And you cannot again arrest him. They cannot under these circumstances.
So historically, Pakistan per se has not been aligned with any bloc.
Right.
If we get back to non-alignment movement, Pakistan was part of it.
Right.
So was India, and Pakistan was in a position that we never join any global bloc. But if I recall, in a recent visit of the army chief to one of the institutions at Lahore, he said that he is very much against bloc politics. And Mr. Khan was actually going for that bloc politics because he abandoned the Americans by saying absolutely no, which was much touted everywhere. And then he was there at a larger theater with the Russian president on the eve of the major offensive against the Ukraine. Do you think Pakistan should have stayed neutral, or do you think it's high time that we also become part of the bloc, or we become part of every bloc, like the Indians are doing? They are the strategic allies of the Americans, but they're also strategic allies of the Soviets and Russians as well. Was Imran Khan doing the right thing, or it was a high risk?
I think this is an interesting situation right now. The kind of world in which we are living today, it is very difficult to interpret it and live with the things which happened, let's say, 50 years back or 60 years back. It is very difficult. It's not possible to do that. But the Indians, for that matter, although they are supporting the Soviets, and the Soviets, of course, have been friends for years together. But the question is, this situation in India, which is changing now, and there are protests against within, and there are about 3 to 4 states which are rebelling against. So the question is, kya Soviets today are going to come out to support India? I don't think it's possible anymore, because the world has changed. And with this, that powers which existed, whether bipolar or otherwise, whatever they in power, but the question is, no one is willing to take a position and take an action against. Now, actions cannot be taken. My contention is that no action be taken against another person, whether the Soviets against the Indians or Indians Pakistan, they cannot take a position under the present circumstances. We have a bomb, they have the bomb. You do something and we'll return it. So no changes can take place.
So the deterrence walls are very high.
Yes.
There is no action.
Very high.
There is no reaction.
It is there, but no one can take an action.
But the Americans, the Ukrainians have been attempting to become part of NATO. And we know that, there's an article that, if one member of the NATO would be attacked, it would be considered the attack on the entire NATO, therefore there would be a reaction. First, why are Americans or the NATO delaying the process?
Right.
And again, since you said the Americans are out of money and war suits them, and it's their industry that flourishes on war.
Right.
So is the delay of including Ukraine into NATO an actual delay by the Americans themselves, or is it something natural? They can't afford to retaliate against the mighty Soviets.
True. What you're saying may be sensible. Whatever you're saying is sensible. But my contention is the way the world has changed and changing at the same time. When we talked on NATO and Western Europe, are they in power? Who has the powers?
So who has the power?
Who has the powers? If you remember, bipolar world that lived, it was divided between the Soviets and the United States. And United States, when came to power, who were the people ruling in Western Europe? Who were the people? It's always the minorities in Western Europe. They were controlling, and the majority of large number of them, they used to be independent and they were making their own domestic decisions. For instance, when I was in Rome, so I lived there for about four years, and I thought that our understanding was that yes, so as in Europe is concerned, Western Europe, and the United States, whatever they have talked about, but based on a minority. The minority members, they controlled it. The majority in Europe, they were independent, more or less, and they never changed. They used the same language. They said other things at the same time, and therefore there was nothing except the minority that ruled. So Europe and NATO, in fact, was controlled.
By
the minorities. And
that has changed.
Yes. Now, if we live and were to talk about it, the question is, what is Western Europe is not dependent anymore. They are independent, more or less, and they are making their own decisions. And NATO, you may say technically that yes, they have been in the majority. They were there, 49, but no one has authority, no one has power. And NATO cannot anymore control and regulate it. Of course not. You can say technically, yes, they can make some statements, but that doesn't mean there's an authority that exists in Western Europe and the United States. They do not have that control anymore. So technically, you may agree that yes, they are, but actually, there is no authority, and that is why I'm saying that the present world in which we are living today, this is a disorder which is affecting everywhere. Everyone is in a state of disorder, except for the Chinese to an extent. But generally, there is no control. So the question is the power and authority which was exercised since 49. Today, there is no authority and there is no power.
So
how do you deal with it? The present world.
So since the power circles are shifting, and nobody has the power right now, and the United States was the outgoing hegemon in the current world order, do you think the Ukrainian war, per se, is
Yeah.
the last-ditch effort of the Americans to stay in control, because they've always done this. They always wanted to rally up the Europeans against the Soviets. Is this another attempt to rally up the NATO? They face the immediate threat
what is
from
happening?
the Soviets.
What is happening for the last
Well,
year?
the Europeans are dependent on the Soviets now.
Oh, they are, so far as I'm concerned, they're more or less independent. There's no issue about that. And they cannot control and regulate anything. There may be some authority and power that they can use it. And beyond that, they cannot do anything. The question is that a year and a half that whatever this war is going on and the Soviets are doing this, the question is Americans cannot to this point and control them and regulate them or against a war against them. They cannot do that. It's not possible anymore. There's no money involved here. Whatever they have, although they have the power and authority, of course, the Americans always have it. But the question is, you cannot use it. But it means that it's a total destruction. And if that happens, then it will be used by the Soviets against the Americans, and the result will be destruction, total destruction. So you cannot do that. You cannot afford this. So in that situation, there are areas which are under the control, that continues. The others, more or less, people are independent. The Soviet Union, wo is independent. They have the authority and power, but the Chinese is the only one who has the authority and the power. And it is a superpower, in my opinion. Some people do not agree with it.
So you're declaring China
will not
the
agree
superpower.
with. And for that I am concerned, I think the Chinese are the superpower at the moment. I agreed with this about a year and a half back with the Americans. I talked here and we had a discussion with it. And I agreed with them. I said, you cannot allow this. And this is not going to happen. And you had to stop it. And if you don't, then will be more problems and difficulties for us. So the Americans cannot now come in and start cooping in Pakistan or India for that matter. The Americans, can they come and play against the Indians? Kya karenge?
They have not. They can't.
Nahi, kuch nahi kar sakte.
They can't.
So how you deal with it?
But don't you think the regime change that happened in Pakistan?
Yes.
So Pakistan's prime minister goes on and meets the Russian president,
right,
Mr. Putin, and following not even a couple of months, he is dethroned. Probably because the Americans are still exercising, or they wield enough amount of authority, because they cannot afford a small country. Because as we studied during multiple courses, that there is a domino effect. Maybe they were fearing that if Pakistan falls into that, there are other states which are going to follow the suit, and the Americans being the superpower and following a much greater loss in Afghanistan, they might be attempting to save their skin the empire is trembling.
You see, the empire already crumbled. The Soviets are concerned. They are not terribly very strong authority in terms of power and economy. In economic terms, they are not very strong. They are very weak. It's the Chinese who has the money. They have the strength, the money. The question is that the Soviets, the way they are fighting this war for a year and a half, the question is their own position internally is very weak. So Afghanistan, for that matter, is in no position to do something, or it can break into 3 states, or one state will continue. And in that period, who is going to control? It's the Chinese. They regulate and he control, and so do the Pakistani and Gavatar and the others. They are all part of that arrangement that has been agreed upon between these to authorities.
So,
So I think from that standpoint it is very, very important.
okay, since we were discussing.
Now, if you have to
Yeah.
make the comparison for
Yeah.
that matter, my contention is, so far as Afghanistan is concerned, and the Chinese and Pakistan together, they are together, and they were connected, and they will control and regulate it. And for the Americans to come to influence Gwadar or other parts, it will not be possible.
But don't you think there is
It
a
will not be
major
possible.
hindrance in China becoming the superpower, because India is just in the neighborhood, and India has shown some greater resilience in terms of economy, in terms of their strength against the Americans, because again they have not bowed down to the American pressure, the Western
That is
pressure,
true. That's true.
and they are showing the muscles to the world now.
But the muscle, if you compare it now, what is the strength of the Indians now? Less than 3%. It's dropped now. And it's further dipping and going down. So another 6 months down, they will have, even the money is not available, which is likely this is to happen. Therefore, I don't want to generally talk about it, that the Indians are likely to break up or crumble. But I think the present situation is the economic condition jo hai, Indians, they don't have the money, and it's a matter of 6 months the matter, and they will have the money. So the question is, the Americans cannot come and help them out. It is just not possible. It's not possible. The world is changing. I am still maintaining that. The world is declining, breaking, they crumble, and how the change is going to wake and how the changes are going to happen, nobody can say about it. But a couple of months or years from now, then the world will, how it's going to arrange itself, nobody knows about.
So you're saying is that we'll find new power centers,
Yeah.
and there will be new citadels. But if the world is going down, that means we're going down to a war, because historically, after every 100 years,
Right,
there used to
right.
be a war, and the world used to be in chaos, and that's when
That's
we used to
true.
have new institutions and new infrastructure.
You see, it is not possible anymore. The world has changed. Bipolar, yes, the Chinese is with the superpower. The rest is in a disorder. And how 5 to 10 years from now, how they're going to change, how they how they are going to come together, we really do not know at this moment. We'll have to wait till then, and then we can decide.
And we'll have that in another conversation. Okay. So, sir, you also mentioned Afghanistan, right?
Yes.
We just witnessed a year has passed when we saw shameful and embarrassing US forces leaving Afghanistan.
Yes.
Leaving would be a wiser word. It would be fled, because the Americans did fled Afghanistan. We saw those choppers flying over Kabul, how the last of the American soldiers is fleeing from Kabul airport. So it's been a year. It's almost I guess couple of days. We commemorated a year.
Yes.
With that perspective, you see, there was a lot of celebration in Pakistan.
Right.
That we finally have gotten us rid from the Americans. But now we have Taliban on our edge and on our necks. And we see this rise of Taliban back in our areas as well, in Swat and other areas.
Yes.
Do you think Taliban's reign in Afghanistan is the moment of celebration for Pakistan, or are we facing another threat from a regime or from a force which has no loyalties?
This is, in my opinion, very unlikely to happen. Unlikely to happen. Whatever some admas, some of them elements who are trying to attack some places here and there, but they will never challenge or create a problem for them, because the authority here in Pakistan, from our context, there cannot be an authority is going to challenge it, and there will be a disorder that is going to happen. They are going to break it up. Of course not. Pakistan today is strong enough, along with the Chinese, they can control it and regulate. Minor these things which are happening from time to time. Some people come, they kill 4 people, 3 people. This has happened. It happened 3 weeks back. It happened.
Yes, yes.
The Americans did not agree with it, they said. But here also, they said that the Taliban probably hit it. Nobody knows yet how it's going to actually happen. But the fact still matters that such things are happening. Within Pakistan, this is happening. So you cannot agree with it.
So, sir, last aspect of our current conversation, because I mean, you're an institution, and you know, any question that I ask you, you're going to open up an unending bundles of your analysis. But I want your analysis on Pakistan's current standing in the world viewpoint. So, Pakistan has been surrounded by Afghan Taliban on the left. On the western border, on the eastern, we have the rising India. Chinese are all-time friends, but we have the American interference here. So Pakistan has always played its strategic position very smartly, and I feel we've made friends with the Americans. We've also been nice to the Chinese as well. But in the current situation, considering Khan's populism, spreading across the country, and his peddling of bloc politics and finally getting away from the Americans, what would be your suggestion, or what would be your analysis on how Pakistan should tread in along these very troubling waters?
Well, I agree with you. It's very turbulent, and it's in a bad situation that Pakistan is internally. Externally, what is happening is not really bothering it, but is actually internally the situation is really bad. Between the states, the northern areas, and the 3 states and 2 states, they are against each other, they are talking against the other. So there is an opposition that is taking place at the moment. So the question is, Kaptan alone, although with 3 states, now they'll is now controlling and regulating. The rest 2 states are saying whatever they're doing it. But the question is that the present situation, that 3 months later, whether they will continue and control and regulate against Kaptan, that I think is not very likely. And in my opinion, they're likely to, this order will break down, and there will, 3 months later, the elections will happen. And that's the only way.
And how should Pakistan position itself on the global stage?
Well, Pakistan, like other states like this, are weak states. All are weak states, and they are struggling from their bad situations, and it's likely to continue. And our situation is not difficult from others. They are also in a bad situation. How to get? We don't have money.
We don't have money.
The problem is there.
So that means we're always going to be aligned with the Americans, because again, we had one opportunity to enter back into the Russian bloc, and we missed the window again. Because after the U2,
U2. That's the
back
old
in 80s or 70s, we lost the window again.
Right. But the question is, under the circumstances prevailing at the moment, you see, you are thinking we are returning to those events that took place. That is not relevant anymore. The present context is where Pakistan, like other states, they are in a very bad situation, and everyone struggle to get out of this. I don't have the money. The others also do not have money. So we have a problem. Sari jagah. The whole dunya is facing the problem. It's not likely to make any difficult. So it is likely to continue, and you will have to struggle to stay in power. And the Chinese, of course, can help us out, Already
they're already bailing out
1.6 billion already, and now willing probably to go money in order to, so they can stay on like this. So that's the only way that's likely to happen. But otherwise, our internal situation are really very critical and bad at the moment. And I don't think the situation is going to change and how it's going to happen. And whether Kaptan Saab is going to come to power and will be a great leader and will come out of this, I'm really not very sure about that. But this is likely to happen.
Thank you so much, sir.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
It was a pleasure indeed having a conversation on changing world dynamics. And as you said, that the world is changing and the world is changing badly, be it geopolitics, be it geoeconomics. Till then,